You just got to let us know. All right, so welcome everyone to our Understanding Statewide Assessment Types, Item Types, and the Implications for Students with Visual Impairments webinar. All right, we are all going to present different parts of this, and we are very excited to say that we have a lot of new content today. So here we go. Okay. Oh, and as always, feel free, put your questions in the chat as we go, and we'll address them as the presenters reach a nice stopping point. And Liz just posted the handouts in the chat, so you can have those to follow along as we go through the whole presentation. All right, so here's our agenda. We're going to talk about computer-based testing Braille access. We're going to talk about paper-based Braille test structure and how oral presentation of assessments works with our students who use Braille. And then we'll have our follow-up evals and questions, and we'll get you out so you can go home by 3. Okay. All right. This link, we are recording this webinar, and the link to the recording will be posted on FIMC-VI's past events webpage under the Florida specific meetings and webinars. Okay. There is a link inside your handout as well to the past events page. Okay. Oops. All right. So we also offer a CVREP credit. So these are the objectives to our in-service. As you can see, we're going to talk about assessment item types for both computer-based and paper-based Braille assessments. And then we also have some resources. Your opening code for today is ITEM, ITEM, item. And then we'll let you know at the end of the webinar how to obtain credit. All right, and this is our lovely slide of acronyms. Somewhere in this presentation, we will reference all of these. You'll see, you started to see these in our other webinars as well. We're not going to read every single one of them to you, but as you see an acronym that you're not familiar with, please go back and check slide 10. Our hope is that it's on there. We have added for this specific webinar, we have added things related to computer-based testing that are not generally on our other acronyms pages. All right, and with that, we are going to start talking about computer-based testing Braille access sample items. They are coming soon, and Tori is here to take it away.
Yes, we are very, very excited to introduce you guys to the computer-based testing Braille access format. And as Karen said, the development is just starting for our sample items. We did have a pilot this spring that was very fun. I'm not sure if any participants are on here, but we are now into developing our sample items. Those sample items, we decided to start with grade 5, reading, writing, math, science, and we're going to include the civics and of course exam so that all grades can kind of interact with that content. The targeted release for our grade 5 and the civics EOC is winter 2025, so it is coming soon. Our next steps after that are going to be high school assessments and remaining EOC sample items. After that, we are going to add additional grade levels until sample items are available for all grades and subjects. With our computer-based testing Braille access format, this is going to allow access to statewide assessments in the secure browser. So in this format, the student is going to use JAWS and a refreshable Braille display, which we call RBD. JAWS and the Braille viewer, which we'll show you in some examples, allows the TA to see what is being displayed on the refreshable Braille display. With this format, this is also going to offer emboss on demand Braille files for all items, passages, and included graphics, which is really, really cool. Students can request specific items, passages, or graphics to be embossed, or you can have a setting where the secure browser will automatically send those emboss requests and it'll automatically emboss everything. So in this computer-based testing Braille access format, we're going to talk about some of the item types your students will be seeing. We're very familiar with the multiple choice with one correct answer, multi-select where they're going to select more than one correct answer, hot text for one correct answer chosen from within the selection, We're going to see some short form equation tools, where there's a written response in an editable text box, and that can be typed in or entered into by selecting the choices available on the screen. You're also going to see the long form equation tool, where a written response in an editable text box involving additional math symbols can be input. There's editing task inline choice, where the student is going to choose an answer for each blank. And in this question type, it could have multiple response types. There could be an equation editor, a drop down, a multiple choice, or some type of combination along those lines. And table matching, where a student chooses a response for each of the row column combinations by selecting a checkbox. And as with hard copy Braille, not all item types can be made accessible. So these are the item types that we're starting with. We're hoping that this list is going to be adjusted in the future, but this is our first look or first experience with how the system is functioning. So we are just getting started, and we are making plans to have more examples as we learn more in this process. So we're gonna hop right into some of the examples and let you guys kind of get a feel for what they're gonna look like. So here we have a multiple choice question on the left side of the screen and a multi-select question on the right side of the screen. On the left side with that multiple choice, we are using a grade 5 reading sample item in UEB contracted format. And then for our math, we did go with grade 5 math sample items in UEB math science. So as far as these items, they look very similar no matter the format. They're very standard, and we do have screenshots on this screen. We did not get it in our screenshots, the fact that there is a selection box before each answer choice that appears on the Braille display. So at the top of our screen, we have the Braille viewer, and it's showing where the focus of JAWS is, like what the JAWS is reading, and that is also what is going to be presented on the Braille display. So it's not always perfect. It doesn't always perfectly align. As you can see in our multiple choice example, the print is behind the Braille a little bit, or maybe it's the multiply select one. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. But it is helpful to monitor your students, but it is a little quirky. You do get off a little bit, but so far so good. And also on the multi-selects, there are little notifications on your Braille display. Like this one says CHK to let the user know that this is a checkbox. And in this example, it is not checked. We have an open set of left parentheses, a space, and then right set of parentheses. And in the middle, it is blank. That indicates that the student has not selected an answer. On their refreshable Braille display, when they do select an answer, that space in between those parentheses is going to be filled with an X. So the student can quickly review if they have selected something or not. Moving on to our next example, we have a hot text question. In this Braille display, the Braille viewer in the top left of the screen, we have a radio button, and it is displayed as RBTN. So again, the student can see that this is a radio button, and this is how students know which words are selectable answer choices online. The radio button, the RBTN notification, is shown in the JAWS status cells on the refreshable Braille display. Status cells need to be enabled to ensure that it shows on the Braille display, but JAWS will announce it either way. So as it's reading, it's still going to say radio button. So the caveat here is that your status cell settings will impact whether or not the status cells show on your Braille display during the test. On the Braille display, no type forms are displayed within the secure browser. That's just JAWS functionality at this time. We have an exciting opportunity though with our Emboss on Demand Braille files. They are formatted as close to the online version as possible. So in those Emboss on Demand files, that's where you're going to find those type forms with a transcriber's note indicating the answer choices are underlined, for example. There is no list in this example right now. We do have a paragraph on this screen with a couple sentences. So for this question, there is no list of answer choices following the paragraph because the students will return to the computer to make their selection on the screen within that paragraph. Up next, we have editing task inline choice. So for this question, we have a number is shown and it has 35 5.714. I'll read it that way. So the question is asking, select words to show one way to decompose the number. In this question, we have drop downs to select answer choices. So those drop downs are formatted as list boxes. So on the Braille viewer, you will see LBX. So the student knows this is a list box. JAWS numbers the items within the list so users know how many choices are available. So JAWS will say 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 3. Emboss on-demand Braille files are formatted to present the entire expression, and then it's going to list each section of the expression with its answer choices. So we'll kind of walk through that on our screenshot that we have here with the Sim Braille. All information not included in the online version is presented in transcriber note indicators. So on the slide here, we have pink highlighting to show the expression in both forms. And then below that expression, the Braille reads options 4, and then we have 35. Below that are the words ones and tens, which is what would appear in that first drop-down list box. And then you can see the second line has 71, and then the options were tenths, hundredths, thousandths in that list box, and continues on for that third list box. Okay, in our CBT Braille Access, we have the equation tool and editor, and very exciting, the MathML will be in there. It's very cool to see. I'm glad we have this example. So MathML allows math text to be presented in both Nemeth and UEB Math Science. A separate Math Viewer box must be selected to show the math material. It will pop up in front of the item in this little blue box. This is the window that pops up after you've selected it to interact with it. JAWS is going to read the math information while the math symbols appear on the Braille display. So your student will be reading MathML. If they are Nemeth, it will appear in Nemeth in your Braille viewer if your settings are appropriate. Here we have our UEBMS showing 3 and 1/2. Also on this question, we have the equation editor. So these boxes here are an editable text box for students to enter their responses. They are shown as shaded response boxes on the paper-based test print versions. And these are converted to blanks for the hard copy Braille tests. Up next, we have editing task inline choice with multiple formats. So here the Braille viewer is showing the drop-down box in red. To open the equation editor, the student can select the calculator-like image when the focus of JAWS is on there. You can select that to enter. And JAWS will provide directions for accessing the drop-down. It will give you a clue of what to click on or what key to use to get into that field. And the drop-down here is going to function just like the last slide, and the second blank is going to show the equation editor so the student can enter their responses using numbers. And here we have an example of table matching. So we also, now in this screenshot in the Braille viewer, we have CHK, so we have checkboxes. The tables are oriented using column and row positions. So this will be noted in the first 4 cells when the refreshable Braille display is in focus on that area. So on our example here, there is a table and we have 4 rows and 4 columns. So if we're looking at R1, C1, row 1, column 1, that area is blank. If we have row 1, column 2, that's where we see the heading passage 1. Then we have row 1, column 3, passage 2, and it will continue through. So you can see that the user here has selected row 4, column 2, which reads, describes how Fanny Farmer was trained to cook and how it affected her, and passage 1 as their answer. JAWS will read both the row and the column information for each of these checkboxes. So students will definitely need to practice this format because it's new, but once they get the hang of it, I think they'll be good to go. Here we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between text-to-speech and braille tags. Braille tags are new to us for this computer-based testing braille access format. So let's review text-to-speech, TTS. That is included for computer-based tests, print test users who have oral presentation as an accommodation. Text-to-speech is formatted for speech clarity, which may include unique spellings or spacing when viewed as print. And then our kiddos are going to have the exciting experience of braille tags. Braille tags are included on computer-based tests for the braille users with oral presentation as an accommodation. These are formatted for braille readability. So this example over here, we have a list of answer choices and they are graphics. So there's a cone, a pyramid, a cube. I'm probably not using the right math terminology, but our example right here is the focus of JAWS is on the second answer choice, and the Braille display reads a square pyramid. So JAWS will announce a square pyramid, and they will also be able to read that description on their Braille display. And in those emboss on demand Braille files, that is also going to be included with the tactile graphics. So those are the item types. You guys have the exciting thing to look forward to for our computer-based testing Braille access. But looking ahead, let's review some of the things we can kind of get started on while we're waiting for those sample items to come out. As far as your district preparation, we want to encourage you guys to ensure your student has access to JAWS using a desktop or a laptop computer. JAWS is only available for Windows operating systems. No other systems can be used at this time. You also want to ensure your student has access to a refreshable Braille display of more than 30 characters. 40 is recommended and has been field tested and on our website, and also there's a link in the presentation to look at FIMC's Braille display comparison sheet. As far as our student prerequisite skills, you can be working with your students on digital entry of text using either 6-key Braille entry or QWERTY keyboard entry. I would encourage you to work on some JAWS keyboard commands for navigation, some basic refreshable Braille display navigation, including the use of the panning keys. Table formatting, we saw that example where it's important for them to understand the layout of columns and rows, and knowledge of how to enter responses in the secure browser using sample the items. And also just to clarify for the refreshable Braille displays, they do need to be more than 30 characters to allow for reading fluency. Some people have used 20 characters in Braille, but the students would only be able to read approximately 3 to 5 words at a time before having to pan and start at the beginning of the Braille display again. So if a student were reading the second bullet on this slide, with the 20 character refreshable Braille display, the student would only be able to read ensure student has access before they would have to pan possibly 2 or 3 times to get through that entire bullet point. And here we have a chart that's telling us all of these sample items for grades 3 through 12 will be completed and available before moving on to operational tests. The grade 5 and civics sample items are in development, and we are hoping for our winter release date. And Kathy or Karen, if you have anything else to add to this slide, please let me know if I forgot anything.
I did want to add one of the ideas behind this is everybody and anybody is going to have access to these grade 5 and civics tests. So that way, even if you have students that aren't in grade 5, anybody above, it's more about getting you access to use the system and get used to the system than it is about the actual content. Even some of your younger students, if they're really advanced, can probably go in and just have a feel for and get an idea of what computer-based testing is like. So that's why we started with a lower grade. We wanted the lowest grade we could get that still covered all of the different subjects, because every subject has a slightly different challenge to it, or could have. And then from there, we'll expand it. And the goal, obviously, is to have a individual test for every grade and subject. But this is a process. We're making lots of progress, but it is going to be a slow rollout because we want to make sure that what ends up being produced is quality.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Can I just add a comment? Because I think you're getting ready to move on to the next topic here. I do want to, for those of you whom this may be new to you, as far as the embossing part of this whole process, you do have to use a specific type of embosser because each embosser has its own tactile graphic file format type sort of thing going on there. So we do have some of those types of embossers here in-house. We're coming up with a plan for how those might be distributed to those of you who really want to get in on this sample test activity. But just do know it has to be a View Plus Rogue embosser in order to emboss the files. If you use a different embosser that's not, correct me if I'm wrong, ladies, it's not going to display correctly. It's going to, yeah.
Correct.
That is something that we just kind of learned through this whole process of developing the ability for students with Braille to take the test on the computer.
Yes, but definitely get in and check it out. It's very cool. Right. And like Kathy and Karen were saying, the younger students, navigation wise, if you're looking for a starting point, they really only need to use a couple keys on the keyboard. You know, the common ones, space, enter, tab, up and down arrows. So don't be scared to get in there. It's really cool once you get in and interact with it. The kids really enjoyed it that participated in the pilot.
Yes. Does anyone have any questions about CBTBA, the computer-based testing Braille access, before we move on? Not yet. Okay, well, don't hesitate to ask because we love talking about that stuff. It's part of our world every day these days.
We're excited about it, yes.
It is. Okay.
All right, I'll hand it over to Kathy K.
All right, now we're going to get into the paper-based Braille test structure. So just to give you a little preface, during this presentation, we'll provide some examples and show the Braille. But to keep this presentation to be a reasonable length, examples are shown in contracted Braille and math examples are mostly shown in one math code or the other. When it was not possible to include both, the examples, we've split them up between UEB Math Science and UEB with Nemeth. Because at FIMC, we support both codes equally, and all math and science have available all the codes. So for math and science, we do UEB Nemeth contracted and uncontracted, and UEB Math Science contracted and uncontracted. And if you are really wanting specific information about the actual formatting of the Braille, there is the other webinar that we did that goes and shows examples of everything in both codes. That's not the focus of this one, but there is that one available that's recorded if you want that. All right, next slide. All right, so for the fast ELA reading and best writing sample items, for grades 3 to 10 ELA reading item types, there's multiple choice with the one correct answer, there's multi-select, more than one correct answer, and there's multi-part, where there's two or more related questions that may be either multiple choice or multi-select. The grade 4 to 10 writing item type, all of them, they have the prompt, which is shown at the beginning and the end of the booklet. It requires written responses totaling no more than 4 Braille pages or 1.5 typed pages in 12-point font. And that'll be important for your students using note takers and stuff like that to know kind of what their limit is. Footnotes may be included in grades 6 to 10 passages, and they'll appear on the following Braille lines. So whatever is on that line, you'll have the word with the superscript footnote, and then they'll finish as much as left of that individual Braille line, and then on the exact following Braille line indented, you'll have the definition for that footnote. It'll repeat the superscript indicator, and then the word, and then what that information is. And then also make sure your students are aware of Braille formats for plays and poetry, because the indentation formatting can be a little confusing if you're not familiar with it. Hopefully they are seeing it in their textbooks, they're seeing it in class, but that's always something to just make sure that they have an awareness of. All right, math, fast math and best EOC item types for grades 3 to 8, and then the EOCs, which are our algebra and geometry for best item types. You've got multiple choice with the one correct answer, multi-select, more than one correct answer. You've got editing tasks, which includes one or more blanks, matching items, which is usually shown in a table format and requires multiple answers. Then there's the shaded response box, which requires answers to be written in text or math forms, and combined format, which could be any variety of these answer types. And then for all math items, it's important to include the word answer in front of the final answer. So make sure your students do this, especially if there was math work done and then their answers at the end. Because if they send it in, that will help the transcriber to be able to locate what their final answer is. For fast best math, the item type braille appearance, the braille version of editing task items, regardless of how it looks in print, is usually going to be labeled blanks, and they'll be labeled with 1, parentheses 1, parentheses 2, and so on. The answer choices are moved to the end of the item and follow a repeated blank labeled with 1 or blank labeled with 2, respectively. Now, the exception to this, though, is when the item is better presented in braille using the print format. And we're going to show you examples in a little bit of all of this. Regarding tactile graphics, if the print order is retained so that the braille lays out exactly how it's shown in print, there's not going to be a note directing the braille reader to the location of the graphic. It'll appear in the same order and the same place. But if the print order has been changed, then there'll be a note to specify the location of the tactile graphic so the braille reader can easily locate it. So sometimes this can be like, if in the print you've got a little paragraph, you have a tactile graphic, and then you have the question and the answer choices. If in braille it lays out better to have the little paragraph and then the question and answers, and on the next page the tactile graphic, it'll note that the tactile graphic's been moved to the next page. All right, for fast best, the recording braille responses to multi-part and editing task items, it's important to work with your student, help them know that some items will have more than one blank within the same item, and thus they're going to need to put in multiple answers that a transcriber may need to interpret. So this occurs in both ELA reading and math tests. Students should be very careful to list their multiple responses to the same item on the braille paper, which is used to document their answers. And different ways they can do it. A student can list like parentheses 1, close parentheses A, parentheses 2, close parentheses C. And so this would indicate that their response, indicate to the response transcribers that the first blank is answer A, and so they could fill that in, and then the second blank is answer C. Another option, if it's a multi-part or a multi-blank, is to actually put the word part or blank with a colon and then put their answer, and then part or blank 2 and then their answer. Or the student can list the letter option and then put the exact word or phrase or number. And that way, the biggest thing is you're making it so the transcriber, when they're looking at it, they can match that letter with an actual answer and know what goes where so that they know where to fill that in. All right, and so for the fast best, for the table matching example, this example was taken from the grade 3 reading sample item number 7 in contracted UEB. You have ELA reading and math are presented the same way. This item is reformatted in Braille. So typically each row heading is presented separately, followed by the corresponding answer choices listed vertically. So here you'd have at the very top of the simulated braille, you've got the running head, and then you've got the item number 7 in that first sentence. And then there's that space, and then you've got cats are grouped into different types. And then below it, A passage 1, B passage 2, C both passages, and so on. Now, occasionally, they can change the appearance of this item type so that there isn't a row heading. And so how we deal with that is if there's no row heading, then it's just each column heading is presented separately and again, followed by the corresponding answer choices. And this is just the typical way that it's done for hard copy braille, but it is different than, as you've seen, from CBT and how that would work. Also, one last note, when it comes to math, these row headings could be tactile graphics. So it could be something like a three-dimensional figure or a graph or something like that. So just be aware of that. Okay. For fast best with the shaded response boxes, these are what replace the response grids and on all paper-based tests. And this began in winter 2023. So in the Braille, the shaded response boxes are shown as blanks. For UEB Nemeth, it's going to be either low line or a long dash, depending on the context and what is there in print. For UEBMS, it'll always be a low line. For answers in shaded response boxes, they can contain the following. So for grade 3, it's only going to be whole numbers and fractions, but fractions can include mixed numbers. And if you're used to the old response grids, this is a different thing. Grade 4 and 5, it's whole numbers, fractions, and decimals. And then when you get to grades 6 to 8 and the EOC, so your algebra and geometry, you've got whole numbers, fractions, decimals, and negative numbers. And the fractions for all of it, all grades include that you can do mixed numbers. Please make sure your students understand and can braille the math symbols listed for all of this so that they know what they can use in these shaded response boxes. And unlike it used to be with the response grids, there's no limit to the number of symbols or how many braille cells it takes. They just can put whatever their answer requires in that box or on their braille paper to be transferred. All right, the Fast Best Math Shaded Response Boxes example. This one's taken from the Best Geometry sample item number 4. And this is an example of a multi-response shaded box question. The format for these types of problems can vary. Whenever there's something like an N equals shaded box, the Braille version will imitate that format and have N equals and then either a low line or a long dash, depending on the context of the Braille code. As you can see in the Nemeth example, it includes the opening and closing indicators for the Nemeth. So on the previous line, that little edge of pink on the upper right is the opening Nemeth indicator. And then you have C equals long dash, and then D equals long dash, and then the closing indicator, Nemeth indicator. While UEB includes the grade 1 symbol indicators in front of the letters to ensure they're read as letters and not read as contractions. So you've got the grade 1 symbol C, and then a low line, then the equal sign, and then a low line, and then the grade 1 symbol D, and the equal sign, and a low line. Also note the different ways the lines are represented, long dash versus the low line. All right, so for Fast Best Math, for the editing task, this is multiple blank box formatting example number 1. So in this example, in the print, in the decomposed number, they have 35, and then they have a box with 2 answer choices, plus 71, and then a box with 3 answer choices, plus 4, and then a box with 3 answer choices. And that's why we picked this as the first example. So then this example is going to show with multiple print boxes can be represented using multiple blank formatting. So in Braille, again, regardless of how it's shown in print, we're going to show it the same way in Braille. This one is shown in UEB with Nemeth contracted. Not all of the Braille could fit on the slide. So what you see in the Sim Braille on the side is the decomposed number with the blanks that I read out, replacing the answer choice boxes. And we've got them color coded and highlighted. So you notice that the first box in the print is shaded yellow. So you see a yellow stripe over the part that has 35 and then a long dash parentheses 1 close parentheses. And then orange for the second box, and it matches with the orange, a long dash parentheses 2 close parentheses. And then blue for the third one with a long dash parentheses 3 close parentheses. And then below there, the answer choices are moved. You have a repeated long dash parentheses 1, and then underneath that you have A and B, and 1s and 10s. And so we've got that all color coded to help it easier to see. So the same blanks repeated below the expression with the answer choices following. The same setup works for all the different blanks. All right, and then Fast Best Math multiple blank box formatting example number 2. So in this one in the print, you have actual blanks instead of boxes, and then in brackets after the blanks, you have the answer choice options. Again, we're going to represent it the same way in Braille, and this is taken from grade 5 math items, sample items number 7 in Nemeth. So this example represents, you've got the Braille requires 2 pages. Here we showed you both pages. The top is the first page with the table. And then the bottom, you've got the highlighted yellow for the first blank, and then the highlighted orange for the second blank. And then the yellow blank is repeated, and then the orange blank is repeated with the answer choices following. All right. Now this one is where we retain the print format for fast math. And so this is from grade 3, item number 3 in the sample math tests. And so the most intelligible way to present this for our younger students was to braille it as exactly as it was shown in print. So underneath the title of favorite books, we've moved the key, and then everything else is shown in UEB Math Science. And you can see how the whole table format was preserved. You've got a table, and the student is picking the key for what each little symbol represents, 2 students or 3 students. And then you have 3 rows, 1 science fiction, 1 comic, and 1 fantasy, and they have to make this pictograph. So in each of those sections, you've got 4 answer choices with different number of pictographs for them to pick. So like A, for science fiction, A has 1, B has 2, C has 3, and D has 6. All right. And then for fast best math combined formatting example 1, this one has responses will require a shaded box and an editing task. So this is from Algebra 1 sample items number 3. And this one's presented in UEB Math Science. So you have an expression and that kind of thing. And then there is a sentence at the bottom. It says the expression 1 plus 0.02 raised to the 12th power represents the growth factor of the company's sales for a period of time lasting. And then you have the shaded response box. And then following that, you have another box that has answer choices A, B, and C, and then a period. So in the Braille, we've highlighted just that section where it shows the pink highlight on the simulated Braille starts with the low line, parentheses 1, representing the shaded response box, and then it is followed by a low line, parentheses 2, representing the multiple choice box. Then below that only the low line 2 blank line identifier is repeated and the answer choices are moved to follow it. And then the third sentence would be modified for the Braille readers so that they would understand the directions to be: write your response for the first blank below on your Braille paper and write the letter of the correct unit to complete the sentence. And that's the very typical language we use with each of these different types of item types. So that will be familiar with them as well. All right, and so now we've got the Fast Best Math combined formatting example number 2. And this one is from Fast Math grade 7 sample item number 5. So the most intelligible way to present this in Braille was to present it using multiple blank formatting for the first answer choice and replace the shaded box with an unlabeled blank. So the highlighting in the pink, you have the opening Nemeth indicator at the end of the first line. The second line reads P blank, parentheses 1, and then another blank. And then below the blank below blank number 1 is repeated with the answer choices listed vertically below it: A less than, B greater than. The second sentence would be changed to read, write the letter of the correct inequality symbol and write your response for the following blank on your Braille paper to represent the solution to the inequality. All right, so now we wanted to give you a heads up. With creating Braille tests, there's some special symbols, and some of these symbols, they are part of the UEB code, so you should learn them, but you don't often see them except in very unique situations. And because of that, we thought we should call your attention to this dot locator for use. Now, dot locator for mention, the kids see that all the time because that one is always the first symbol on the special symbols page at the beginning of every Braille textbook and Braille test. But this dot locator for use is only used once in a while, and you can see the sim Braille. It's dot 5 followed by a full Braille cell. And so it's included to help a Braille reader recognize the symbols that follow, which are in the bottom part of a cell if they're kind of on their own standing alone. It can be used in specific circumstances, and I already told you on the screen, I give you a breakdown of the dots, but I already told you that. And so in this situation, what it's depicting is you've got almost kind of like a word search kind of format where you've got 4 columns with 3 rows, and there's a capital letter in each spot, in each row and column. And so we know, because in Braille, you would need a capital indicator for each of those. And with all the letters except the vowels, some of the vowels, you would need grade 1 symbol indicator. So instead of having all of that crammed in there and to preserve the formatting of the grid type shape, you can use this dot locator for use along with a grade 1 passage indicator and a capitals passage indicator. So the dot, this example is taken from the International Council on English Braille, ICEB rulebook. Their rules of UEB, it's in section 3.14 if you want to go look it up. And you can see that it starts with the dot locator for use, then a grade 1 passage indicator, and a capital passage indicator. And then you have the list of letters that are just the list of letters without anything, because you've already said, hey, everything that follows this is going to be a letter, and everything that follows this is going to be capitalized. So then on the line below it, after the list of letters, there's another dot locator for use, a capitals terminator, and then a grade 1 terminator. And note that the indicators are nested. And so you close in opening and closing. So we opened with the grade 1 symbol and then we open the capital. So we're going to close capital first and then close grade 1 symbol indicators. Any questions? All right. For the Fast Math and Best DOC sample test materials, we've got some of these sample test materials will require manipulatives, and on sample tests, the teacher must provide the manipulatives. Encourage students, especially with math tests, to read the transcriber's notes in the beginning of each of the volumes, because it's going to tell them important information unique to the brailing of that individual test. And the notes are prioritized, so the information they need the most will be first, and the information about the Braille codes will be at the end. And this can have a variety of things, but like if they've done anything very unique in the test, they will put it here so the student will know. All right, this is about manipulatives for these sample items. This is from the Best Geometry sample item number 1. So you've got the operational manipulatives will be provided automatically when a specific Braille test is ordered. Manipulatives are provided by FIMC for operational. You can see the 25-26 new to statewide assessments webinar for information about manipulatives for operational tests. For the sample test material, as we said, the teacher of the visually impaired needs to provide it. And I like to include this example because you need to have an idea of if it's how complex these diagrams and things are. So ideas for how you could do this, you could use a geometro rectangle that could be used with a stick or a string or something to simulate the vertical dotted line at the top of the figure for the square and the part that revolves. And then for the other answer choices, the easiest and probably quickest way, if you have access to a 3D printer, you could possibly have them make it. Another option is if you are someone who has access to or could get someone to work with some wooden cylinders and cubes, if you could like hollow them out in those shapes. So this is an example that shows you need to know the standards and work with the general education classroom teachers to make sure you know that your student is learning the concepts that might appear on the assessment. If it's in the standards, it can be tested on the test. This includes using a compass to do a construction and in geometry. And so anything that's in the standards is fair game on a test, and you may see it. All right, and while we're talking about real complex tactile graphics, make sure you teach your students to efficiently and effectively read tactile graphics, especially from different perspectives. Because graphics in tests can be shown from top-down view, side view, enlarged view, etc. And sometimes there are several related tactile graphics in one question, which could be something like the example on the next slide. So on this example, it shows how within one test item, several related but different pictures, which can be tactile graphics, are presented together and then need to be interpreted to come up with the correct answer. So picture 1 in the top left is a top-down view of a school's layout with one small section in the lower right corner outlined showing one wing of a school. Picture 2 in the top right, the lines extending from the outlined section of the school in picture 1 to picture 2, which is an enlarged front-facing view of just one hallway of the school with one section on the right side outlined showing a door to a classroom. Picture 3 in the lower right, lines extending from the outlined door in picture 2 to picture 3, which is another enlarged front-facing view of one classroom from the doorway, with a section on the left outline showing a distant view of one of 3 desks in the room. Picture 4 in the lower left, lines extending from the outlined distant view of the desk in picture 3 to picture 4, which is an enlarged side view of one student sitting at a desk. So the question could ask something such as the following. The diagrams below show the organization within a school and how to get to a specific person's desk. In which of the following pictures would you greet the person? Would it be picture 1, picture 2, picture 3, or picture 4? And if you're curious about the answer, anybody want to take a guess? I don't see it. We probably should go on.
Yeah.
It's actually picture 3. When you would get to the door, you would greet the person.
Greet the teacher. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And from here, I will turn it over to oral presentation with Karen.
All right, here we go. The last main section. We're going to talk about oral presentation of Florida Statewide Assessments. So the first thing is to note that oral presentation instructions for paper-based tests are provided in the 2025-2026 Statewide Assessments Accommodations Guide. All right, it'll tell you the information that can be read aloud. It will tell you the information that cannot. We're going to give you the basics right here of the information that can be read aloud. So on a reading test, you can read the test questions and the answer choices. Okay, those include words, phrases, or isolated individual sentences from passages that appear in the questions and answer choices. Also, 1 to 2 lines of poetry in test questions and answer choices can be read aloud. For the writing, only the prompt can be read aloud. And for math, science, and social studies tests, you can read all the passages, the test questions, and the answer choices. It is very important to note to make sure that the student has oral presentation as an accommodation on their IEP. This would also enable you to read the TN descriptions that are included in the Braille notes for hard copy Braille to your students. Okay. So oral presentation can be an option the student requests as long as it's listed as an accommodation on their IEP. So you can state it in such a way that the teacher or the student determines which accommodations to use in which situations. So some tests may need to be read aloud, while others you would not read aloud. Students who are good at interpreting and comprehending written text for reading tests probably don't need that read aloud, but maybe they have reversals in math, and so then you need to read the math items out loud. So just make sure that you word your IEP accommodations so that you or the student can tell you what they would like. Okay. All right. All right. So now that we have different types of testing, we're going to include the computer-based test information as well. So computer-based testing standard, students who are using print to access it, those students will use TTS. All right, that is built into the secure browser system, but it is important for those low vision students who may be using TTS to be aware that their comprehension may be different when they're using a human reader versus using synthesized speech. So just make sure when you're doing your testing that you assess your student and teach those necessary skills prior to statewide testing when you're doing your functional vision and learning media assessment. Okay. For the new computer-based testing Braille access, that oral information will be provided through TTS descriptions or Braille tags, which are automatically read by JAWS when it's allowable. Note that the passages inside the reading will not read out loud with JAWS. Okay, there's a setting that does not allow those passages to be read aloud. So also be sure that students have oral presentation on their IEP to access this information. All right, especially if once we get into the operational piece of this. So most students are familiar with a human reader and do pretty well with comprehension, as that's our go-to a lot of times, but it could take them some practice to become accustomed to the synthesized speech for TTS or JAWS. So please make sure you provide them ample opportunities to practice with that. Okay. All right, so this is a very simple oral presentation, fast ELA reading example, showing you what you can read and what you cannot read. So in part A, you can see that that's a simple directions and multiple choice answers, and that you can read everything in that portion of the item. You can also read the directions for part B, but then you'll see that the answer choices for part B are written in a paragraph form. And that paragraph is from the passage. And so therefore it may not be read aloud because it has more than the allowable sentences in it. So you can only read part A to the student. Okay. Okay, and then this is an example of oral presentation for the FAST Best Math. All right, and you can see here, you can read the directions, right? A figure is shown, and then you can actually describe the figure. This one they describe for you. The figure should be described as follows. It says, a horizontal line is shown. Two rays extend upward from the horizontal line from a shared point, creating three angles. The angle to the left is labeled 7x. The label in the middle has a shaded angle marker and is labeled 8x. The angle to the right is labeled 44.4 degrees. Okay, so you can create that description, and then you can also read the question below that. What is the measure in degrees of the shaded angle? And then let's see. So there are more examples in the accommodations guide for reading, writing, math, science, and social studies. And then, so it gives you examples and it gives you an idea how to do it, but the test administrator does not get a script or a description of, or a list of descriptions for orally administering figures in the tests. Sometimes college entry assessments do provide those lists, but our tests do not yet.
Okay. We do have a question in the chat that I'll read out loud really quickly before we move on.
Okay.
We have the question, are descriptions for each graphic provided to ensure consistency between test administrators? Great.
Not yet. Not for all graphics either. So we are starting the process of including descriptions for certain complex graphics in the Braille notes. But no, not consistently, not yet.
Another coming soon.
And it would just be for students receiving Braille copies, because it would be in the Braille notes.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully if they're doing, well, I guess if you're doing paper-based tests, you still have to come up with those descriptions on your own as well. Yes. Okay. Does that answer your question? Yes, I see Sarah's response. I completely agree with that, Sarah. And yes, the way that they describe this figure on the screen as a math content person probably is not the way that I would have gone about it either. So hopefully just know that your students will have it in as a tactile graphic under their fingers as you are describing it to them. But yes, that is something we have discussed, that is not a standardized process at this point. All right. Okay, now this one we have not included previously because, you know, in the hard copy Braille, we don't do the tables in the same way. but this is how the accommodations guide recommends describing tables. And interestingly enough, this is similar to how tables are presented in JAWS, or by JAWS, in our computer-based testing Braille access code. All right, so as I read the description, note that the option letter label is read after the column and row information. So in CBTBA items, there's not an option letter label like A, B, C, or D like there is here, just a checkbox that can be selected. Because it's online, there isn't multiple choice exactly, it's multi-select in that way. So, okay, so the table should be described as follows. A table is shown. The table has 3 rows and 3 columns. From left to right, the column headings read X equals 1, X equals 2, X equals 3. From top to bottom, the row headings read 2x plus 5 equals 9, 2x plus 5 is less than 9, 2x plus 5 is less than or equal to 9. So then it will say x equals 1, 2x plus 5 equals 9, option A. Okay, so can you follow that on the table there where you can see it reads the column heading first, x equals 1, then it reads the row heading, 2x plus 5 equals 9, and those two meet at option A. Okay, so then we have x equals 1, 2x plus 5 equals 9. Whoops, x equals, hold on. Thought there was a mistake in that. Option B, which one is option B? Option B goes down, right? So x equals 1, 2x plus 5 is less than 9. Option B. Okay. X equals 3, 2x plus 5. What are we doing here? Where's C? It should be
C is in the top right. So it'll be X.
It should be X equals 2 in the second one, right?
C.
X equals 2, 2x plus 5 equals 9. Option B. X equals 3, 2x plus 5 equals 9. Option C. Right? Am I reading that right now? Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you can kind of see how that works, and that is very similar. You can use this example to start discussing tables with your students who may be interested in CBTBA. Okay. All right, any questions about that before I move on? Any of that? Okay, all right, let's go into our resources. I know we posted some links as we were going. This page is full of them. All right, first we gave you both accommodations guides. There's one for the 25-26 statewide assessments for 3 to 12, grades 3 to 12. And then there is a separate one for K to 2 for STAR testing. I know we didn't talk about them today, but we thought you might want the accommodations guide reference right there. There are oral presentation examples in both. Okay, now also note that these can be updated throughout the year, so make sure you're using the latest version. I would either search the resource section of the testing portal, or you can come back to these links, which don't take you to the exact document, they take you to the page. Okay. And then here are the recent Braille codebook updates from ICEB and BANA, so from the International Council of English Braille and the Braille Authority of North America. So there's the Rules of Unified English Braille with 3rd edition, which was updated in 2024. The Nimith Braille Code for Mathematics and Science Notation was updated in 2022. And then updated again April 2025, but they did not change the name of it. They just updated it. So if you go into the link, it will take you to the most up-to-date one. And then the guidelines and standards for tactile graphics also was updated in 2022. And then just for fun, we added our previously recorded webinars related to assessment. There's the Braille formats webinar that Kathy referenced earlier. We did an overview of statewide assessments. I know we call it new to statewide assessment, but just if you need any kind of a refresher or you have a question about how manipulatives work or anything specific, how you order tests, it's in there. And then also we did a specific Florida 2026 Florida alternate assessment webinar. So if you have any questions related to that, start there. And then as always, you can always reach out to any of us to get answers. Okay. All right. You've seen this on every one of our webinars as well. This is our feedback about Braille assessments. So we have a survey about the Braille versions of the Florida statewide assessments. All right. These are for you to go in and indicate any kind of issues that you had. They can be quality issues related to the Braille paper, the Braille dots, Braille notes, the scripts, tactile graphics. Any of the thermoform pages had errors or smush dots, anything like that. Page numbering, binding, page order. We've had that where someone called in and said, I just don't understand how these are put in this order. And yeah, there was an issue with that volume. So then we got that handled and sent out the right one. Also, it has been updated to include reporting when a test in an incorrect Braille code is received. For instance, let's say you ordered UEB Math Science uncontracted and you receive Nimith UEB with Nimith contracted. Please turn those issues in ASAP. We're really trying to work on where that breakdown happens. So if it has happened to you, please be aware of it this year and report it as soon as possible. Okay, so this survey is for all Florida statewide assessments, including the alternate assessment. It's available year round. It's pretty straightforward to fill out. It is located on the forms page of the FIMC website, or you can scan the QR code, or in your PowerPoint, obviously it's linked as well. Okay, I think I answered that. Okay, all right, does anyone have any questions about anything we talked about today? Is anyone interested in trying out the new CBTBA sample items? Yeah, I know, we are. Okay. Yes, okay, yay, we got one yes.
Yay, Sarah.
That's right.
You're on my list, Sarah.
Okay. Okay, so if we want to keep going there, Tori, for 1 second, we have just a couple more slides. She wants a rogue. Okay, Sarah's up. So here's Liz's email and our emails as well. So you can always reach out to any one of the three of us in the Accessible Assessments Department at FIMC. And yeah, we'll do our best to get you the answer to your question. All right, and I don't see any other questions. Okay. Do you want to finish it, Liz, or you want me to finish it?
You can keep going. You're doing such a wonderful job.
All right. So for our wrap up, here is the training evaluation form and the in-service credit form. All right. Your closing code is types, TYPES, types. All right. So when you go in and fill these out, let's see. Yep. You will receive a certificate via email for the in-service credit. Which you can turn into your district or LEA and receive credit for that webinar. Okay, and then any feedback you would like to give us, we are always open to improving our presentations and to including the information that you want in these webinars. So we would love for you to fill out the training evaluation form as well.
Yeah, and we do take the feedback, because if you've been around for a while, you probably noticed, oh, that's new, or that's we didn't do that before. Yeah, so we're always trying to help everyone understand assessment so you can make sure that your students are participating. Link to the chat. Do you mean link to the...
There you go. I got it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, the links are in the chat in case the QR code's not working or you don't have a device to use. Yes, there you go. Thank you.
There you go. Sorry, it just took me a second. Okay.
I know. I meant to do that too, but I had something in the chat that I was waiting. I typed it up probably like 45 minutes ago, and I've been sitting on it. I wanted to say something before we finished. Yeah, thank you all so much for being here and learning with us. But I did want to go back one time to this thing that we're so excited about, the computer-based testing Braille access. I'm still getting that acronym. I did also want to make sure that you all are aware that we do have a Braille display literacy program. So it's the Chameleon 20, and the Mantis Q40, which we're talking about 30 cells or more display. But point being that with this program, if you as the TBI complete the required training, which is essentially that you need to take the Hive APH Hive course on the device, and you go through that and you show Andrea Wallace that you finished, then you get to give that device to your student and it becomes their device and they keep it and we're never going to come looking for it. So that's a thing that's out there. If you're thinking, oh yes, I really want my student to learn how to use a braille display, learn how to use JAWS, do all of those things, we can possibly help make that happen for you. So I'm going to hit enter on this draft chat
It's a
message
great
that I've had
course.
sitting here.
Great course. I've done it with some students in the past, and it was really good to get you up and running and just gives you the basics, but while you and your student are getting comfortable together.
Yeah. So, Tori, are there other trainings that you all are doing this year that will help teachers be ready for CBT?
Andrea is putting out her JAWS course. She's adding the additional internet navigation soon, but if you haven't already checked out her first chunk with JAWS, I've done that as well. It's very comprehensive. I wish I had it when I was in the classroom because it was very helpful. The knowledge that she put in that first one is really good to get yourself started and your student. So if you haven't taken advantage of that, I would highly suggest checking that out. And she has a lot of videos in there. So if you don't currently have a JAWS license on your computer, I think it's still valuable. She has a lot of walkthrough videos to where you can see how JAWS is intended to interact with that material. So definitely check that out. We do have just some general accessibility courses coming up. But Andrea is really hitting her stride with the JAWS stuff. So I have to give her a shout out for people to check that out.
And if you need JAWS, if your student is registered with us, then you can order Fusion from us. So Fusion is JAWS and ZoomText. You don't have to install both. We don't recommend that you install both because it becomes very memory heavy. But you can order that through us. That is an APH product. So if your student is registered with us, you can go order JAWS and we'll give you a license. The license, they're annual licenses. So then you have to come back and get another license a year later. Okay. And that's all I wanted to share. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew all those things so you're all ready to participate in the sample braille items that are coming.
Yes, any questions, send them our way. We would love to get you started and kind of help you pick your direction if you're very interested. We can kind of help you with the first steps in getting into that.
That's right. Okay. Excellent. All right. Is there anything else anyone wants to ask?
I don't know, but I think Sarah might be contacting one of you.
Sure. Yes. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much for coming and hanging out with us and